Hi, my name is Paula Wright, and this is a little video blog of all the CPD I've done this year. So I've learnt loads this year. One of the things that's changed my practice a lot is knowing that using an algorithm for treating depression makes a huge difference to the rate of remission in treatment. And so this is the algorithm I now use, which was provided by Professor Hamish McAllister-Williams, who works in our area. And I keep this pinned up in a laminated sheet by my desk. The other thing I've learnt this year is that there is a plan to eradicate hepatitis C. There's an excellent response to treatment, and WHO targets for its elimination by 2030. So we've written to all our hepatitis C patients to advise them that treatment is available and ask them if they want to be referred. Two colleagues locally, Dr. David Jones and Dr. Kate Cushing, have written this fantastic book for parents on helping them recognise when their children are sick and knowing what to do. And they have it has a whole range of topics in it, including, for example, this one about assessing how sick your child is. And I use this book a lot, but if I don't have a copy, I've made a one-page patient leaflet that I give to patients, which is here, and patients love receiving either the book or simply an advice sheet with common sense advice of things to look out for. I've been doing a bit of reading about models of reflection because I work as an appraiser and as a GP tutor, and many colleagues struggle with reflection. So I've done a video which you might like to have a look at if you're interested in this, based on the Rolf model, what, so what, now what, and a slightly more developed set of questions to help people who struggle to reflect. This is another fantastic assessment tool that I found. I was signposted to it by colleagues on the Facebook group TICOs, from which I've learned a lot, and it has some fantastic algorithms in it. I didn't know very much about low testosterone and when to measure and replace it, and so this flowchart's been really useful to have an overview of what to do. And this was from a local presentation from a sexual health specialist, and it's a one-page summary of all the tests you might want to do for GUM problems in women and men. And this was a flowchart I came across really helpful for dealing with patients who are on antipsychotics and have an elevated prolactin. So I found this really useful to have to hand in my Google Drive of resources, and I'll talk about that later. Also useful to have been signposted to this HRT guidance and treatment pathway by a colleague on the TICO's Facebook group. It's nicely divided into whether patients need estrogen only or combined treatment, and whether sequential or continuous. And this is something that we increasingly have become aware of and try and deal with, which is cow's milk protein allergy in infants. And this is the flowchart for formula-fed patients. And recently we've introduced a DVT pathway for patients who present to primary care to avoid them being referred into hospital. So we need to assess their Wells score and organise an ultrasound and a D-dimer, and this is the flowchart that we now have to follow and refer to for this. And our local guidelines on diabetes, that very challenging topic, have been laid out very helpfully in this infographic, which I now also keep to hand when I'm needing to intensify treatment for our type 2 diabetics. And also, as part of one of our learning group sessions, I've come across these sick day rules for diabetics. This is really, really useful. A PDF document that can be given to diabetics, tells you what to do, how sickness affects your blood glucose. It's got some bits about what to do with different types of tablets and whether you should stop any of them, and also how to interpret your blood sugars when you're ill and what to do about it. This is the new topic of the year, frailty, and so it's been useful to have this to understand how to classify patients with frailty. And this is some reading I've been doing on the side around decision making and how we use different types of decision making, so intuitive or analytical, so system 1 or system 2. The system 1 is the fast decision making you use when you're very experienced at something. System 2 is when you have to think things through a little bit more slowly and with more effort, and system 1, the sort of automatic thinking, is more prone to cognitive biases. Anyway, it's been really interesting to read about this, and I really recommend it to anybody who's interested in decision making. and this is a list of the different cognitive biases that can arise when you're in this sort of fast, automated mode of thinking. This has been had a big impact on my practice, as I'm sure it has for many, and this awareness of detecting patients with sepsis. And this is a flowchart about emergency contraception and the different options depending on when the unprotected intercourse took place, whether they're prepared to consider a coil and how far it is since the intercourse, and where they are in their cycle. And so this has definitely changed my practice. I've also done quite a bit of reading around other aspects of managing GP workload, and I've done a video which you can also watch on my YouTube channel about this, and this has involved learning about a number of different documents which are highlighted here. This was from an update I went to on perinatal mental health, and it was really useful to have a set of questions to know when to refer for urgent senior psychiatric assessment in patients with depression. So these are the high risk factors, for the red flags for patients who have previous depression. And this was a quick reference table I made for common lab abnormalities based on a document written by one of our local haematologists. So I have this pinned up and laminated on next to my desk. This was a really useful document I found out about when I did an appraisal, so from an appraisee. It's a document jointly produced by Cancer Research UK and the RCGP, and it has some very easy to use tables about what to do in relation to specific symptoms. This was a very useful guideline that I became aware of around identifying risk in eating disorders and sort of red, amber and green factors for patients with eating disorders, and this is part of the marzipan guidelines. This was from a local guideline on various ENT problems, and turned into several flowcharts, and in particular this one is around managing snoring, and it also has some really useful diagrams about how to grade tonsil sizes, which I wasn't aware of, and also the snoring in primary care, examination of the pharynx, grading as well. This was something I came across in one of our child safeguarding updates. It's a HARC sort of screening questionnaire for domestic violence, and I thought that was a useful acronym to be aware of. And this was a quick reference sheet I made for myself because I really struggled to interpret spirometry results, so I made a little quick reference sheet so that I can remember what each number is and what the cut-offs are and so on. So that's my little reference sheet that I put in my library. And this is my Google Drive, where I keep a CPD folder with subject subfolders, and I can access this wherever I work. So this has become hugely reassuring, because it doesn't matter if I change rooms or change surgeries to do locums, I can find the key resources that I identify throughout the year in my Google Drive. And this was a book that really changed the way I work and learn and do CPD. The Organised Mind, really strongly recommend it. And so finally, the things that make it easier for me to feel confident, feeling that I can formulate questions. Diagrams really help. Using my Google Drive, my learning group has been absolutely fantastic, and on the nights when we do BMJ reviews, where we go through 8 issues, we sometimes cover 20 topics in 2 hours just with the highlights, and that's great. Covering a huge range of topics and using a broad range of methods really helps me. And joining the TICO's Facebook group has been fantastically helpful as well, because there's lots of clinical cases discussed on there, and people put links to relevant guidelines. If you're interested, you can see some of my other videos on my YouTube channel. I have videos on appraisal, GP workload, sessional work and locum chamber.